questions. This first one is very simple. If it asks you the degree is going to be your highest exponent, which is 7. Now, if it asks you to use the leading coefficient test to determine the end behavior, you need to realize that it's a to the n. So here would be like 3x to the 7th would be your leading coefficient. This would be a to the n. Now, this chart, you have to know whether you write it down for your test or however you feel to do that. If a is positive and n is odd, it falls left and rises right. If a is positive and n is even, it rises left and rises right. If a is negative and n is odd, it rises left and falls right. And if a is negative and n is even, it falls left and falls right. Now here, first thing, make sure it's in descending order. This is 4x to the 5th is your leading coefficient. So if I said a to the n, that's the same thing as 4x to the 5th, okay? Now, if a is either positive or negative, well, in this case, a is positive. N, which is your 5, is either even or odd. Well, 5 is odd. So if a is positive and n is odd, it falls left and rises right. Okay? Now, this one is already in order, and it's the same way. A is positive, n is odd. So it falls left and rises right. They're not all going to fall that way. But in this case, those two particular problems that it gave me did. Okay? Now, the next question told me, it said, state the possible zeros of the polynomial function, give the multiplicities, and then state whether it crosses or touches and turns around. Now, I did write this here. You need to know, once we get to work in this problem, if it's even, it touches. If it's odd, it crosses. And when I say it, I mean the multiplicities. Okay? So here's your problem. F of x equals 3 times x minus 2 times x plus 6 cubed. Now, the zeros of this function splits this into 3 problems. 3 equals 0, which isn't correct, so it just goes away. X minus 2 equals 0, and x plus 6 equals 0. You don't pay attention to those exponents while you're just finding your zeros, okay? So x equals 2 is a possible 0, and x equals negative 6 is these are your possible zeros, okay? So when you type this in, you would say 2, comma, negative 6 for your possible zeros. Now, your multiplicities. Now, your multiplicities are whatever these exponents are. Okay? So your multiplicity at x equals 2 is 1, because what's the understood exponent here? 1. Your multiplicity at x equals negative 6 is 3, because it's the exponent with x plus 3. Now, is 1 even or odd? It is odd, so it crosses. 3 is also odd, so it crosses. So, when you go to answer this, first off, you're going to have to do your zeros. X equals 2, negative 6. I think it already has x equals for you, so you just put 2, comma, negative 6. Your multiplicity at 2 is 1. Your multiplicity at negative 6 is 3. Then it gives you like 4 different options to choose from. These both cross. They do not have to both cross. One could be even and one could be odd, and one could cross and one could touch. You'll just have to state that in your answer choices. Now, of course, they give you one that puts everything in one problem. So if I say f of x equals x to the fourth minus 4x cubed plus 4x squared. Now, a to the n. In this case, we're looking right here. A is positive. N is even. So if A is positive and N is even, it rises left and rises right. Okay? Now, the next step is you're going to say x to the fourth minus 4x cubed plus 4x squared. When you go to state your zeros, you've got to factor this. Take an x squared out. You have x squared minus 4x plus 4. X squared equals 0. Then here you have x and x. Your signs are the same. They're both negative. Multiplies to give you 4 and adds to give you 4. It's 2. So x equals 0 here. X equals 2 and x equals 2. So your x-intercepts are your zeros. Same thing. Are 0 and 2. Okay? Now, no intercepts, when we graph this, they don't cross because they're even. Okay? Now, so when you put 0, 2, is your intercepts in which the graph touches and turns around. Okay? So when you go through this, you need to know that because they're even, it touches and turns around. Your y-intercept is 0. Because when you go in and you take this problem right here. If you plug 0 in here, so 0 to the fourth minus 4 times 0 cubed plus 4 times 0 squared. Everything's multiplied times 0, so it's just 0. Now, the way you know if this problem is symmetric. When it's symmetric, you take your original problem, x to the fourth minus 4x cubed plus 4x squared, and you plug negative x in. So negative x to the fourth minus 4 times negative x cubed plus 4 times negative x squared. Now, it's even, so this is just going to be x to the fourth. This is going to be negative 4x cubed. Then this is going to be even, so it's going to be plus 4x squared. So when you distribute this negative, you've got x to the fourth plus 4x cubed plus 4x squared. So these are the same signs. So it's going to be, it's not going to be symmetric. This is neither. The answer is going to be neither, okay? And when you look at this, if you know that it's crossing at 0 and it's crossing at 2, okay? It's going to look something like this. But when you have to choose it out of those graphs, Ryan, get away. Now, when you have to choose this out of those graphs, there's only one graph that crosses at 0 and 2, and it looks something like this, okay?